Welcome to our Posh podcast. This is Gabrielle with my sick voice today. I'm sorry. I apologize to everyone. But I have my amazing co-hosts here, my beautiful daughter Marcella.
Hello.
And my amazing co-host Bernie.
Hello.
And our beautiful co-host Bernie.
I actually thought you were going to say it initially, my beautiful co-host
Feels left out.
Bernie, you're beautiful.
I feel beautiful. I feel pretty.
And our amazing DJ Spider.
The sexy one.
Yeah.
And my beautiful guest today, Miss Tonja Hartman, who I met because her daughter goes to school with Jolie at DFW Performing Arts Conservatory in South Lake. And if you want to know about that school, listen to episode 30 and 31.
How do you remember that?
How can you keep all that straight?
Those are the first videos, too.
That was the first time we did video.
And we had Scott and Dana on who
and the school is amazing. And that's how I met Tonja, who came from LA, heard about the school, moved back here. And that's how we met. And when I got to know her, there's just so much to her, so many layers to this woman. And we're going to learn all about it. But first, we're going to do a new segment.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to play a random sound effect that we may replace.
Yeah. And it is a 60-second rapid question.
This is so new.
And we're going to keep track of all our guests. And then we'll have a prize for who has the most.
I should have drank more coffee.
Answers.
No kidding.
I
need more coffee, too.
That'd be exciting. Okay, I'm excited now.
Jolie and I practiced at the house and I was awful.
How much
I was
you
like,
get done?
I don't know. She's like, you have to answer.
What's your name?
I get nervous under pressure.
How many did you get done in the 60 seconds?
Not a lot. I feel like
She
5.
got
Jolie got like 20.
Really?
Yeah, Julie has gone the most so far. I did it at the Septien Voice Studio Christmas party, and I did it
was
with
like a
all
trial
their
run.
with all their
Did Jolie
teachers.
win of everybody?
No, she didn't. I did it with the teachers, and it was interesting. Some would get 5, and then the one who won got 14.
I'm really curious.
Yeah.
So tell me when to start.
I was just thinking because of my voice, maybe I should have Bernie read
You do
them. Yeah, you just go down one after the other.
Tell me when to start the timer.
Mm-hmm.
We're asking Tonja first.
Yeah, Tonja, you start.
Tonja's going first.
Come on.
All right, you ready?
Pressure's on. Okay.
Are you going to keep up with the word?
I do how many she
All
gets.
right,
You
all
do
right.
the
I'm
timer.
a timer.
Here we go.
And then just a spider has the sound bites.
All right, and go. If you could buy any type of food right now, what would you buy?
Sushi.
What color is your toothbrush?
Pink.
If you could be any animal, what would it be and why?
A horse, because I love horses and they just go free.
What is one of the things you would put on your bucket list?
Oh my gosh. Travel throughout Europe in a summer.
Who is your favorite superhero and why?
Oh, Wonder Woman. Yeah.
Why?
Because she's a woman and she's a superhero. Hello.
Who do you admire the most?
Gosh, there are more than one, but I'll say my mom who's in heaven. But yes, my mom.
What is your favorite summer activity?
The beach.
If a movie was made of your life, what genre would it be and who would you play? Who would play you? Who would play you?
Okay, so the first part would probably be action drama-ish. And who would play me? Sandra Bullock.
Ooh,
If you could be any... Oh, you got 8.
That was good.
That's not bad at all.
I love it.
I needed to answer faster.
You were
But
so clear
you had
and
really good answers.
answer person. Was it my fern? My
Good
fern?
answer, person.
My fern.
We were only going to do our guests. And
Oh,
then what I'm going to do over a period
I
of
like the
time.
idea of her doing it.
I got it.
I want to be
Then-
entertained.
No kidding.
Then we're going to give the winner a gift.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go.
Yes.
That was fun.
I know. You did really good.
Thank you.
So, Tonja, tell us a little bit of background. Where did you grow up? Give us a short little synopsis of it. And then I want to know the passion that you have, that you are doing right now, that you're putting together, and what you're doing with your life, because I am so impressed and I can't wait to hear all about it. Tell our audience what your story is.
Well, I was born in West Texas and grew up in Arlington, Texas. My family moved there when I was like 18 months old and grew up in South Arlington. So then just rolling in from that. My passion is to be training up leaders in the entertainment industry primarily, but anybody who wants to go after big goals where they're going to be in the forefront of a lot of opposition and a lot of, face time. But my main passion is the entertainment industry, and raising up people to make a difference there through their gift and talents. By knowing the word.
And an actor yourself, correct?
I am a singer and an actor. It's kind of since I could walk and talk, and my dad was a singer. But yeah, just training up people to know God's word, to make a difference. And primarily that means we need to be training up the next generation, people who are teens and young adults who there's so much confusion out there with them on their direction in life. So that's my passion.
So how do you do, so that's interesting. How do you, in society now, when you're talking about acting and all that kind of different thing, how do you guide very impressionable young actors and actresses right now? Because in the world today, I mean, you look at the people like the Harvey Weinsteins that are very, got a lot of clout, a lot of pull, and there's a lot of people who are getting taken advantage of. So it's a long question, sorry. So
it's a good one.
Yeah, and so in a society where it's do whatever you got to do to get ahead, however you got to get ahead, how do you guide? I mean, what's your guide or what's your guide to guiding people?
Well, this goes into more of my background and why it is my passion. Because as a young girl who really had that gifting of performing at an early age, I had a lot of that purpose changed because of abuse that happened to me. And then that just kind of ricochets through your life.
What happened to you?
I was sexually abused at a very young age. The first time was, I don't recall the exact time. I just know I was old enough to have a babysitter. And my brother is 3.5 years older than me, and he also had a babysitter. So I was pretty young. Unfortunately, it was a male babysitter at my grandmother's. And it was supposedly, somebody that she knew in the family. A lot of people don't even, they can't remember who this person was, but he had just come out of the military and took me into a bedroom in my grandparents' house. And, that was the first occurrence for me.
Like rape?
It did not, but just had me to touch and fondle. And those are just things that I literally can recall them to my memory if I choose to.
Wow.
I have to choose to say that's going to be in the past. It's not going to be a part of what drives me anymore.
Right.
And then the second time was family member. And that went on just through a lot of additional pieces and layers to that.
How old?
At that time, I would have been 6th grade.
Man.
Yeah,
Why
I was
is that
6th grade.
always a thing
that
you hear?
It's
a
crazy.
Family member.
That's
and then it gets
sure.
worse because I was date raped by somebody I knew in high school. And all those things drive your decisions, knowing that what you want to do. By this time, at that age, I was involved with horses. We kind of talked about horses earlier. I was a rodeo queen, but I was modeling and performing. And it's really by God's gift that some things changed where my mom wouldn't allow me to continue to pursue it at that point in time. Because if I would have gone into the industry and gone to New York or whatever, it would have pummeled me instead of me making a difference in it, which is exactly what we see happening. Because I was so broken on the inside. And people on the outside could see me as Tonja's driven. She can do whatever she sets her mind to. And I was that. But so much of it was because I wanted to cover up the lie that I was telling, that you hear a lot of abusers say this, but you buy into that lie that you're horrible, you caused it, you did things. And that the first abuser, that's what he told me. That's what he made me believe. That if I ever told anybody, he would make them think that I had created it. Of course, I was tiny. I was little. There's no way I could have caused it, but you believe that lie for so many years. And so from that abuse, life happened, and we can kind of backtrack to that in a minute. But what drives me with other people is knowing that if you're going to get involved in this industry, you have to know who you are and whose you are. And at the age of 28, I was a Christian. I believed in God. I knew he loved me, but I didn't really know the word. And it was in that I had a very specific encounter that I knew I needed to start like it started just pouring into me of learning the word and learning to let it be a part of my life. And that's what made the difference with me.
Let me back up a little bit. Like, when you were sexually abused the second time by a family member, you were 6th grade, you said.
Mm-hmm.
How long did that last?
The sexual abuse?
Yes.
The literal sexual abuse occurrence happened one time.
What?
But there were other things where that person put me in very compromising positions with boys. And this is supposed to be somebody in your family that you can look up to.
Well, your innocence is taken.
Your innocence is totally taken.
It's one of the things that. Sorry to interrupt you. Just you're making me think about this because just I'm right there with you, Marcella. Is the fact that we hear about this story all the time, and we're hearing more and more about that. And it's true when you don't know any better, you don't know any better. But when you're exposed to something, it's even as an adult, I've seen stuff that I was exposed to when I was younger that I'm paying for now, that that I have to work consciously now to remove, that had nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
But that's the incredibly, it's just a sad thing. And no one's thinking about the person who's the offender is not thinking about what it's doing to the offendee. Right.
Oh, for sure.
Well, especially being family, that gets very like.
It's immediate trust level that's up there. You have the trust level because they have access to you know them through whoever their family.
Well, and that's kind of what happened is that person would say a lot of things of mocking me. And the reason you see the crown that means so much to me is it literally has
you have a crown
deep
necklace?
purpose. I have a crown necklace on. I have crown earrings on today too, but crowns mean a lot to me because this person would call me Queenie, and it was in a mocking way of trying to get me to not tell people things or making me believe certain, like make me cry, just horrible, ugly things, and then call me Queenie. And so when I had this encounter with God where he really started showing me who he said I am, he showed me scripture where he was talking about me being his royalty, and I am his, just the royal crown. And he really imparted in me in that moment of saying, no, this is what queen means to me. You don't listen to that. You replace it with the truth. And it was hugely profound. I mean, I bawled in the moment. And ever since then, I'm like, yeah, I bought into a whole lie of what somebody said about me. And I need to buy into what the one truth says about me. And that I am his bride, that I am his royalty. He's created me for such a time as this. And I believe we need all women out there to know that. We need to empower women to, number one, not believe. I went on in the professional world and had all kinds of sexual advanced stuff happen. I actually lost a job because I would not buy into the advances of a boss. I also have a background in the real estate industry and was in the title insurance business. I was a sales and marketing director, and I lost a position because somebody was trying to make advances to me and then was a boss figure and found a way to get rid of me, he thought. So I actually recorded, I got tipped off from another lady who had this happen to them. So I started carrying a pocket recorder with me at that time. And I knew that in a court of law, it wouldn't stand up, but I knew that for my dignity, it would.
Mm-hmm.
And literally in this situation, I was fired, and I was able to send the voice recording to the main bosses in Houston and basically just said, I don't want my job back here, but I want to be paid everything. I'm a single mom, and I also don't want to be blacklisted and not have a job. So you need to make this right. And they did.
Wow.
Somewhat.
Wow.
So then the date rape, was that first date? Was that someone you went out with more often than one time? Did that happen once?
Is it a drug deal? Were you drunk?
No. It was horses. I knew this person from horses. He was a little older than me, but was trusted by a lot of people. He was very charismatic in personality and had gone to his house, and they had a barn in the back of their property. He also mowed lawns or whatever for a side business and had his van and his equipment back there. And so I went out to see this new horse in my naivety, and took me to where his van was. And basically he raped me out there.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so how old were you when this happens?
I was
Happened.
again, exact dates. I was a senior in high
Yeah, I
school,
mean,
so I
roughly.
don't remember if I was 7. I think I was 17. I
Yeah.
don't think I had turned 18 yet.
So what do you? So the situation happens. What's the aftermath? What
Yeah, do you
happens?
tell?
Yeah,
Oh my
I mean, what do you do at this point? So it's happened. Someone you trusted. And what's your reaction? I mean, I think anyone can imagine what a reaction, but what is your reaction at this point? What do you remember responding to, and how did it go from there?
Well, and I think that this is why I have the passion I do is the fact that that happens and you believe that it is that you've caused things. Of course, because I had been sexually abused earlier on around, the 6th grade time on up to that, you believe that you are making choices that are causing these things. It's your fault. I'm the names that you can get called. And that definitely wasn't true, but you do believe that it was your fault and you don't want to tell anybody. But it certainly shapes the decisions you make. You don't pursue the kind of person you would really love to be with. You allow people into your inner world that ends up being other types of abusers in some way or another, or just not respectful of women.
That makes so much sense for everything. I mean, and I know we have tons of questions to ask, but it's cool to hear you talk about how you finally were able to determine how to remedy that.
Yeah.
Well, and you also do you have one daughter or?
I have one daughter from my current marriage, and then I have 2 boys from my
Okay.
first marriage.
But I would assume that having a daughter, it's very, are you super, super protective
That's
with
a
her?
good
Does she know? Does she know all these things? I would
She
assume.
knows all of these
Yeah.
things. Yeah.
So-
And then, because my mom was always, nothing like that happened to us. And I think because of how she is, but I think people made fun of her a lot because of her making sure where we were at. Like, she was like, I'm sorry, I don't know. Even if she trusted the parent, she doesn't know if there's an older brother. Is there a cousin?
We've had
Is there
these
an
discussions.
uncle? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I mean, you can't go over to a house that she literally had to know everything, and we weren't allowed to be at certain places or go anywhere. I mean, even with family,
So
she
that's
was really strict.
Yeah, because a
That's
lot of times
tough,
it is an
though.
uncle or it is a this or that. It's,
Very few sleepovers
That-
for my kids.
but-
very, very
Very
few.
But so
people I
hear this
trust.
one out. So that's a tough thing, right? Here's why this is a tough thing is because getting a chance to know you, I feel like very, very well, like family, and
Yep.
clearly you too.
Yes.
And I know how great a parent you and Patrick are, but I also know what a degenerate she was. Like, she was a mess, right? And I say that just because, and I love Marcella. Anyone know I love Marcella? She's like my sister, and we all. I mean, I was a mess at one point too. But it's interesting because of hearing that. You
you
know,
got to have those people who are solid, though.
but
to
that's the
bring you
thing.
back.
So here's the question about
First
it.
and
Though.
foremost, I know I don't have a voice, but she had 2 parents. Number 1.
Yeah.
That's true. My dad.
Yeah.
My dad was so I didn't grow up with Patrick being a parent. So this
Right.
is what we always say is my dad part of me was,
Yeah.
I think, what?
Exactly.
That-
The crazy part.
Yeah.
The crazy part.
Yeah.
And I think
That's
that,
tough.
right, because
Yeah.
Oh, this
we do
gets
have
into my other
2
part of the
parents.
passion.
Yeah.
Well, but it also goes into finish because I want to say something to you.
Well, right. But I mean, but with my mom, and I think what I'm asking with you is for your daughter, were you that way? Did you become super, super strict where she would go, sleepovers? Like, were you worried about any family or
How old's your
anything
daughter
like that?
again?
She is 15.
Okay. So right now you're about to try to figure it out. I mean, it seems like because, and it goes with your question. So sorry, I'm not trying to overtake
No,
it. Just
you're
it goes with what you just said.
Yeah.
Based on what you've experienced and based on kind of what you guys experienced with Marcella, the question is,
And also, Marcella was perfect till she was 18.
no, and that's fine,
then
right?
after
When she
18,
got out.
She went crazy.
So so what do you do? How do you not put? I guess my question is, with this being said and with
Yeah.
that being said, how do you not grip too tight to where she rebels?
I think a lot
she
of
was so
people
great till she was
do.
18. She was like, "F this,"
Yeah.
and went to town.
Yeah.
Made up for all the lost time.
I think a lot of people do that. So the pendulum swings from one extreme to the next.
Yes.
And that's what we see happening. So we see it happening in our nation. We see it happening in families. And so when I had this experience with God, I was seeing so many patterns in my family repeat. And then I knew enough from the word of remembering generational curses. And
Oh,
I'm like,
really?
God,
I've
I
never
want
heard
to
that
know
before.
how to not repeat
Yeah.
generational curses because of what did happen to me. You know, Marcel, just going back to you and what you were saying, I don't hold on too tight, but I do hold on tight enough.
Right.
I began to educate myself. I got myself in counseling, a good Christian counseling, and not all counseling, whether it's Christian or whether it's not Christian, is good.
Were you going through a church or were you going through an actual professional?
I actually went through a counselor. I was listening. There's some people on Christian radio that I loved and admired. I'd listened to them a lot, and it's through New Life Clinic. Dr. Henry Cloud, Townsend, they have done a ton of resources. And so I was kind of engulfing in their books. So I found a counselor that was affiliated with them. And from that, I mean, I basically went for 3 years and I had my boys to go, but I was doing a lot of my own stuff as well outside of there and in the Word. But from that, God he really talks a lot about generational curses will repeat, and they come from the father. Generational curses are passed on from the fathers. Now, that being said, there's generational curses that got passed on through my mother's side, but it was from her father.
What?
So I began to say, God, I don't want to be like overly holding on to my kids, but I want to be wise and smart and not make choices that my parents made. And I love both of my parents, but you can just look back and you can see a lot of things because we get caught up in just living how everybody else lives instead of with the wisdom that we've been given. And that's what I just chose to do. I knew that I had a very good chance of screwing my kids up. And I didn't want that to happen. And certainly with a girl, I just wanted to have a little girl. But I just decided once she got old enough, we were going to talk about the things that happened. And if she has a calling on her life where she's going to be out there exposed to a lot of things in the actor's world, she's going to get hit with a whole lot of stuff. And I want her to not be sheltered so much from it that she herself is having to learn to fight the battle. And I think that that's the thing we do. If we're not careful when we've gone through stuff, we shelter our kids and we hold on to them so much that we don't allow them to experience pain. And pain is good for any of us. We know when you're working out or whatever, you got to have the pain in order to get the muscle mass. It's the same thing with anything in our life. Sometimes going through a struggle and having healthy people around you at the same time, God's truth, guiding you through the storm instead of trying to shy away from the storm is what makes you stronger and more wise and where you're not fearful. Because fear does a lot of things to us, that it cripples us
Very
at
much so.
different levels. And I'm like, well, screw that. I don't want to be crippled in my own life. I want to soar. The little girl in me that loved to perform and was just, I'm driven. I'm just a driven personality. I want to take the stuff that began to drive that out. I want to pull all that out and let the little girl shine that God created me to be. And we talked about in our little game earlier, Wonder Woman, that movie was really like prophetic to me. I literally cried in it because that's kind of who God told me he was creating me to be in this time, is just a freaking warrior woman. And I don't know why it's nothing in me, myself, except I have to say God put it in me to just, stuff gets to me. It gets me down. You know, you cry, life sucks sometimes. It's not fair. But I have this drive in me to say I'm going to keep going because there's other people that you want to make a difference for and you want to help them to be able to soar in their life and to not be pummeled. You see so many women particularly who get beat down in life to where they think that they need to stay with the abusers or in abusive situations or that they're not worth this or that. But I see it with guys too. And unfortunately, we live in a culture to where there's the whole Me Too thing that has gone so far that it's throwing out common sense because everybody needs to stand on their integrity. I've seen plenty of women also do horrible things to get the guy, and everybody deserves to, everybody needs to be accountable for their choices, right. Guys and girls. But unfortunately, that being said, statistically, there is a problem in our world with overall, with men and what's going on there. And women are rising to the occasion and have had to suck it up in life and deal with a lot of things that weren't fair to them. And we've proven for the most part, many women have proven that they can suck it up. They've gone through a lot of things and still said, I'm not going to quit. I'm not going to quit. And you see more women rising to leadership in different areas. And we see more and more men, unfortunately, getting coddled and excuses being made. And therefore, the first thing that happens, their ego needs to be stroked and they go find another woman, or they go find their career and they're an absent father or they're an absent husband in some way or another. And it's sad to me because that's not what God created a man to be either. He wants him to be a warrior, tough, strong. And I just think that we've sort of taken that away from men in our society. And if we're not careful with the way things are going today, I think that we're going to even further make a man feel less empowered because of the Me Too movement. He's going to be afraid to go after a girl and be
we've
romantic.
talked about that a lot because it gets very confusing. Like, well, not confused. I'm not confused, but I think that people are really. I'm like, okay, like we're getting a little bit like a guy's not even allowed to tell a girl she's pretty anymore,
Exactly.
and they're like,
what's up with that?
I'm like, whoa, I don't even know what's like. I feel bad for guys in that sense.
Yes, I do too.
And at first, I like the Me Too movement came out. And it made sense to me and I got it. And we've talked about it on show 14 and 15. I was in very abusive relationships. And then I did talk once on the show about I was a go-go dancer at a time. And I was go-go dancing when the Super Bowl was in Dallas. And a manager came up to me and was like, I think these are all my girls right here. We think that you need to be in Hollywood. You need to be in movies. Long story short was, grooming me on the phone. Luckily, I have a strong mother who, and he did have girls that were on TV shows and in movies and told me, and then eventually after talking, you need to come to LA. Don't tell your parents. Don't tell your family. They won't want what's best for you. I want what's best for you. I'll sit you down. You'll be in the next Transformers. Where it came to a point where it was like, but what are you going to do for us? And I was like, oh, hell no. And he almost tried to break me down by manipulating my mind and told me that I was, what's the word? Not insecure, but I was immature sexually with my sexuality. I was like, no, I'm not. But basically, like, if I wasn't going to sleep with him and the Transformers guy, that I was like, what was I thinking? Kind of making fun of me. I remember crying on the phone and telling her, and we got in. It was weird, like just how he tried to get in my head, and that I needed to go to California alone and on my own. Well, I, though, knew to not make that choice. So, and I wasn't going to go, and I didn't need fame that badly. Like, I don't need to sleep my way there. But then I feel like the Me Too movement somehow took a turn, and I get the Harvey Weinstein stuff. Yeah. But then why did you go to the room? Like, why did you put yourself in the scenario to be kind of, I think you have a choice to say, I made the choice to not go to California. That seemed weird to me. Why would I go by myself and not tell my family? And why would I go do that? It's just, you have to be as a woman. And I think it's so amazing what you're doing with young people because they need to recognize when that's taking that turn. Yeah. And what signs to see, like, I don't care what the movie part is. Yeah. I mean,
the trafficking thing is so huge in the industry. And fortunately and unfortunately, personally had some situations we've dealt with and have been educated. So I've educated Ari. But that's one of the things that so many girls have been got caught up in because they get told something and they do want to be famous, or especially if they already know they're pursuing something in the industry and they get told something and they do believe, because I know for myself, some of my family members don't get being in the entertainment industry. So that's where they get in your head of saying, don't tell them they're not going to get it. But they're literally about to traffic you. Yeah, and it's not going to look anything like what you think it will look like.
But you know, just like that, with what both of y'all are saying, you know, I think people are more aware, but now than they were before. Yes. Right? Because, and, you know, I think the question you were just saying, like, well, how would you know not to walk in there or whatnot? At this point, I think now because it's been brought more to the surface, I think what's going on is that people are more aware of it, so they now know. Because if you go to somebody who does want to be in Hollywood, who does want to be in Transformers, and they know some lackey who knows Harvey Weinstein or Will Smith or just somebody who has a picture with them or has 5 pictures with them that just happen to be at the same club and knows somebody whose cousin is a third cousin and blah, blah, blah. It's easy for some 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old girl to say, oh my God, holy shit, I want to be on that?
I mean, even the amount of times I didn't talk to this person one time. I was believing he wanted to have a meeting with me at 3 a.m. and after the club closed. And I was like, I don't think that's an appropriate meeting time. And I'm in my go-go wear. I'm like, not.
He's like, it's appropriate.
Yeah. But I did, because I was a dancer. I grew up wanting to be dancing for everybody, wanting to be famous, wanting those things. So when somebody tells you those things, you're like, oh, okay. And you but they do try to get in your head like really badly. And I told her, I said, if she hadn't raised me to really recognize some of those signs, I could have easily been like, I'm going here. And I don't even know what would have happened. It's so scary.
Yeah,
well,
sadly,
and to that, you were talking earlier about, the foundation your mom gave you, but you kind of went wild or whatever. You're like, okay, hold the phone. This is where that stops.
Yeah.
But to the Weinstein thing, I think that's very different from a lot of these traffickers, because those are people in the industry. And definitely years ago, women weren't even treated the way they are now. It's still a little backwards, but there's so much more awareness about it. But so many women had so many things happen to them. I do think that it's very unfortunate to me particularly with Weinstein. Let's just talk about him. The other women who weren't willing to then stand up and talk about it just because it would affect their pocketbook. Yeah. That's where I have to say, whoa, I don't care what it's going to affect me there. I have to stand up for what's right and for other people. And unfortunately, there's going to always be people who won't. They're not going to get on the bandwagon of standing up and speaking out about things until they know there's enough evidence and it's not going to hurt their pocketbook. That's just the reality.
The other part about it, I think, to speaking to what you are saying you do, and you help instill the values in young actors and actresses and models and whoever, I think what ends up happening is, I'm assuming this, that when some bad situation like a sexual abuse thing happens from some sexual trafficker for Hollywood or whatever, a lot of people, they compartmentalize it to where they just put it away. It just happened.
That's what I did.
They put it away. And then
it's going to come out eventually.
That wound will bleed eventually on somebody. So I think it speaks a lot to the good thing you're doing that you're focused on.
Mm-hmm. Well,
she's teaching a class. She's teaching a class at at the school. She's teaching a class.
What school?
At PAC, Performing Arts Conservatory,
and Southlake.
Piece of what I do, but
I know. Jolie was saying she could be in class with her for hours.
Yeah,
so great.
Because I think the biggest deal is, with anything, whether you're going to be an athlete or an actor, you're going to be in politics, anything like that, you got to get good at your craft, whatever that craft is, and that is a piece of it. But if you're not taking care of your inner self and really preparing it, that craft isn't going to make a difference, because it's eventually, it may do okay for a while, but eventually there's going to be some huge fallout. And we see it with people getting on drugs, or they make their life a mess. And it's because mentally, emotionally, whatever, they just break down. And we are made up of two parts as human beings. We're a soul and we're a spirit. Mm-hmm. And our soul is our mind, will, and emotions. And that's the part that just wreaks havoc on us. And what God's word says is, when you become a Christian, you should let your spirit drive you. Well, okay, so if you've had a lot of brokenness, you got to fix both sides. And that's where I have a whole thing with a lot of stuff within the church. I do believe in it. It's important, but it doesn't mean it's your guide. And that, unfortunately, there's way too much of that. I have called a lot of stuff out there.
Most people in full church are in church of and that's the truth. Because,
well, there's broken people everywhere. That doesn't mean that that's why they go there. However, there's certain leaders where there's just a lot of stuff I've had to deal with in that regard. Sure. I am a believer in the church. I understand it. God's word tells me to go. However, there's a lot of junk that's happened that's not what God wants either. And I have a huge problem with that, because it's steering people awry. And it also makes leaders just believe they can do what they want.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy. So that's so true. What just it seems like every week, sometime in the last few weeks or every couple of weeks, I'm seeing right now I'm seeing a lot of sex trafficking rings being busted. Mm-hmm. Last week, was it this week or last week? There was one of some pastor in Arlington. And
I saw
that one
and I
just
grew up in
happened.
Arlington, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
and a couple weeks back was another one here in the DFW area. And it's crazy because these are the, and I am a Christian. I go to therapy through a Christian therapist. I do all the different things like that, but it's crazy. Just like you said, and we all have experienced, there's like so many broken people. Everyone has stuff that they don't deal with, or they don't know how to deal with it, or they don't know to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Or, and eventually, like I said, everything bleeds.
I think the problem in the church is way too many people are churchy. And I don't mean that negative, because I wish a lot of things didn't happen to me that did, but I'm a real person. And so most of my passion is for people outside of the church, or people who've gone through life. Unfortunately, the church knows how to get people in the door, and, it's sort of like in your family. They know how to bring you into the family, but then if you're super, super, super broken, you're on drugs, your life's just a whole mess, or you're going through very horrible sickness, the church knows what to do with that. But for the majority of people that life has happened, and maybe there's some messy stuff, and maybe even some bad choices in the middle of the messy stuff, they don't do well with that at all, particularly if you are a woman, but definitely both sides. I know for me, with several things I've gone through, it wasn't stuff I created. I had many instances where the man just where the church pushed me out and protected the guy.
We just had this conversation.
Tell us about your husband's, was it your second husband's porn addiction?
Yeah.
And
with
the church, tell us that story.
So the first time I went to some pastoral counseling, the pastor basically, this was when the boy's dad and I were married.
Here in Dallas, Fort Worth? DFW?
In Arlington.
Okay.
And the boy's dad and I have a good relationship, but he had finished college. I did not. I had the job where I was driven.
Husband?
This was my first husband.
Okay.
This is the boy's dad.
Okay.
And again, we have a good relationship, but there was just so much immaturity, and he was protected from it because, he was a good athlete in high school. He graduated Dean's List, all of these things. And I wasn't getting an ear to the stuff that he wasn't being responsible as a husband and then a father, and was gambling and money we didn't have. And I was working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, sometimes seasonally. And then the second child came about, and basically the pastor at that time said, look, you got to do whatever your husband says. You got to submit. And even if he wants you to watch porn with him, that means even though that may not be right, if he's telling you to do that, you do it with him and you obey him. And I'm like, I'm sorry.
The pastor told you this.
That's what the pastor said to me.
Talk about an out of context
Whoa.
verse.
Exactly. And
Lord.
I knew that. I'm like, okay, this is not what the word says. Because the word says anything that's, yes, there is a submission thing. And I do believe that you need to have a final. Jesus submits to God, but that's a loving reverence. It's not a forced thing to somebody having the right to cause you to do things that are abusive or wrong.
Yeah,
And so that was the first instance. The boy's dad and I ended up divorced. And that was a sad thing, because he never fought for the marriage. I put my foot down on some things that were happening and basically said, if you go out and gamble money we don't have, when you come home, the doors are going to be locked, and I'll have the locks changed. So I did it and followed through, and he just never fought for the marriage, and loved his mom was just an amazing, amazing woman. Loved her, but we've grown from it. I still was very hurt by that because of the rejection. Didn't know how to handle all the rejection, but I think what I was standing for was right.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was in the church, freshly divorced, and the pastor that we had, small denominational church, I'll try to be careful of that because it's not a denomination issue, it's certain types of churches.
Yes.
But this guy had started coming to our church as a single mom. He, took notice of me, and my pastor was all for it. Now, reality is, knowing what I know now, being more healthy, he should have said, I'm sorry, you're freshly divorced, you shouldn't be dating. And I'm not a believer that if you have a breakup and a boyfriend or a marriage, you need to take some time, or you're not dating anybody at all. Marcella's like, uh-oh.
Marcella's looking at me.
But basically, he encouraged us dating. And from that, I ended up marrying this guy. Everybody in my family loved him except my dad. But there's brokenness from my dad, and there's some respect there. I love my father, but there was some brokenness. So not listening to his voice because of that. But pastor, friends, everybody loved this guy. And basically, he ended up, as soon as we got married, switched. He was a womanizer. He would flirt with women in front of me. And very subtle, and then try to make you believe that you're crazy. It was literally, I spent more of my time
before.
And I think I remember hearing some of your podcasts where I'm like, oh yeah. But constantly was making me believe I was crazy about certain things and that my mindset was off. And in the church, he was starting to make people believe that I was kind of off my rocker a bit. Nobody was believing me. And he was verbally abusive and emotionally abusive, not physical, because I would never allow that. Mm-hmm. And then to the point where my boys started seeing stuff, that's where I took a stand. And I was separated from him more than I was with him. But my dad was nowhere to be found. I mean, it was sort of like, hey, we're kind of out of this. We don't want to be in the middle of it. Instead of them becoming your protector, the only one that was my protector in the situation was my mom. She believed me. She believed in me to the point where I'm like, there's something going on. I don't know what it is, but I know there's something more. And he's making people believe I'm a nutcase. And my mom agreed to hire a private investigator.
No way.
Yes. And it was very costly. But in that, our home that we had, he had the locks changed. So the private investigator came to our home. Gave him permission to bust in. And from that, they found a whole stash of porn. It filled up a whole sack.
What?
And that was, I took it all to the pastor's house and basically was like, this is what I found. And that pastor sadly rebuked me more for bringing that to his house than the fact that than apologizing to me for the fact that I'm not crazy, that I knew what I was talking about. And, that was when I really got myself, and the boys were in counseling. I was in counseling for 3 years, and I was taking them twice a month just to make sure I'm healing from it. They're healing. And
how many years were you with him?
We were together for 4 years, but we were separated more than we were together, honestly. But it was at that time that I was in a closet just crying out and saying, this is not what I want. I don't want to repeat stuff in my family. And I knew about the generational curses, and I just made a commitment to say I'm changing the direction of things. I don't care what it takes. And it's been a hellacious road, but standing up for what is right, not being silent to the things that you believe that you need to be silent about. In my family, as it turns out, I mean, there's a lot of people that knew and could sense certain things that were going on. For example, when I was sexually abused, and in talking to them, it's like you did nothing, but yet those people sort of want you to not tell your story, and they try to make you believe that it's wrong to tell your story.
Your family.
Yeah. And it's nothing mean to them, but it's like nothing good really comes from staying silent about those things, because
right.
The struggle needs to happen for the transition. But we make the victims, and I hate the name victim. I'm not going to live as a victim, but the victims of abuse and bad stuff, they are made to believe that they shouldn't stand up for it. And the people who get protected in the end are the ones who are abusive or doing the wrong things.
Well, I think like so many people want to pretend like their family is perfect,
yes,
and that this is perfect. And so you can't let anybody know that this could happen in our family. But our favorite thing ever to say is secrets make you sick. And if you don't come out and tell it, and usually if you help other people, it makes you heal too. And that people don't feel like they're alone in that.
Yeah.
But I think it's usually they don't want people to think their family is like that.
We want to put on the whole facade of everything's great, and in the end, you're dying on the inside.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's how I refuse to live my life. So therefore, in my family, I'm sort of the troublemaker, because I will stand up for what is right. Even myself, I will call myself out first and foremost, but I don't play favorites on your junk.
Yeah.
Like, so therefore, I'm a troublemaker. I frustrate people. I'm like, well, okay, but I'm not going to sit here and act like this is okay when it's not.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the best way. We're like that. I mean, we're
People
just
don't like it all the time, though.
No, but you know what? That story of iron sharpens iron. It's not really pleasant when an iron's getting sharpened and it makes that screeching sound. It's the same thing when we're sharpening each other. Sometimes it gets a little intense, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Really, the people I want closest to me are those people who are going to say, you know what, Tonja, you were kind of over here and you need to fix that. Or
not the yes people.
You sit here and you talk about this, but I saw you doing it over here. I want those people to call me out and help me to be better, because that's really what Jesus's ministry was about. He loved all people. He was not afraid to call stuff out, and he did, but not in a way of oppressing the truth to anybody. And then he would deal with the junk and then say, okay, let's sit down and eat.
Yeah, there definitely has to be, delivery is the most important part of it. There has to be, because if you're calling someone out, you do it in a aggressive way or condemning way, no one takes that. Nobody will take that well. So,
and I think we've all done that. Yeah. I just think that when we do it, we need to recognize, okay, that person's not ready to receive what I want to say to them. And so therefore it becomes harsh. We do it maybe sometimes trying to call somebody's stuff out because we're afraid of the choices we can see that they're going to make. And in the end, if they're not going to receive it, you have to let them go. You got to let them do what they're going to do and know that you love them, but maybe you're not going to be a part of what their choices are. Maybe there was some of that went on, Marcella, with you and your mom at a period of time. We've all gone through that. But I know that I have some situations with my son that it gets very heated. Very difficult. The situation, the relationship's very difficult.
We're going to talk about that in our next hour.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you about your third husband. So we wrap up your marriage stuff.
Yes. Okay. So I went on from there, was divorced. And again, talking about your past and your abuse, you just feel like a failure, even though those weren't choices I wanted to make. It's one of my biggest desires was to be a mom and to be a wife in the midst of being independent. But we went through a divorce. I continued in counseling and healing and being a mom, and basically just said, God, if you want me to be married again, you're going to have to do it, because I kind of don't have that part right. So you got to pick him. And the boys and I were going to Fellowship Church in Grapevine, big singles ministry, and that's where I met Ari's dad. And
that's where you met him. I didn't know.
Yeah, and it was at a time when my mom was, I've told y'all, she was my mentor, amazing, godly woman. She was sold out to God, but she was so fun and vivacious. And she suddenly got brain cancer. And she was literally, it was inoperable, and we knew she was going to die, and it happened fairly quickly. And it was when she was sick that God whispered to me and said, I'm going to bring you a mate. And I was kind of had a Sarah moment of like, yeah, right, God, because I'm not even looking. And it was like the next week or 2 weeks later, I journal a lot, so it's all in my journals, that I met him in my singles class and sat down next to him. And literally after the class, I kind of scammed out of there. And he said he's more of a shy guy. He had to chase after me. He said, something came over me that I needed to chase after you or I may never see you again. And that's a beautiful part of the story, because I do know that God brought us together. And anytime, God wants to do something awesome, there is Satan right there behind to try to tear it down. And we have to be on guard with that. And what happened over time is there is a lot of stuff. Life happens. Dealt with some things with my son, which we'll talk about later. But I knew when I was pregnant with Ari, I was given a vision when I was asleep about this passion I have to do in the entertainment industry. At that point in time, I wasn't really even doing anything anymore with my acting and really singing. I'll back up a little bit, because when my mom was alive, she believed in me still continuing to pursue it and was paying for me to go to the recording studio and record some songs. And I got accepted to Grapevine Opry. And then that was about the time she got sick, and I had to bow out of it. And after she died, it's just like that love for it died for a season. And in this dream, I was getting ready to give birth to Ariana, my daughter. And God said, I'm imparting a dream into you of making a difference in the entertainment industry through now what I am doing. And I just sort of woke up and told my husband about it, thinking he's going to think I'm nuts. And he totally affirmed it. He agreed with it. And I'm like, well, God's going to have to totally make all that happen. So we fast forward a little bit. I also have an interior design business and all of these things that I was working on. And he had an opportunity to move to California with his job. And in that transition, it took a year for me to shut my business down and make the transition. And he already had a report out there. And we made the transition, and we're there less than a year. And I found out he had been having an affair, which knocked my socks off, because when I did marry him, and before we even got married, most of our discussions were about life and what we both wanted. I didn't pull any punches about it because I had the strike too. Mm-hmm. And I have to tell you, you hear so many stories from people where they say, I didn't see that one coming. But with him, I just didn't at all. Knowing he traveled. No. And that's what was so scary is the fact that he covered it up so well.
How long had it been going on?
During that year of transition, it had been going on for like that whole year on and off.
Did he meet her in California?
He met her in California before he actually had to report out there and at a hotel. And some of those guards that we knew to have relationally got taken down. And the person that contacted me was the husband of the woman. They were from Austin, actually.
Damn.
The great thing, God is so great, is because the husband, I guess, is on the police force. He's an investigator on the police force in Austin, Texas. So,
oh, my goodness.
He did his own investigating, and I was at the eye doctor, got this weird phone call and text. Somebody wanted me to call him, and that's how I found out, December 2nd of that first year. And it's kind of like a bizarre thing.
How long ago was this?
This was in 2014.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Long time.
Yeah. So we hadn't even been in California. We knew the catalyst to get out there was his job. And I'm like, okay, God, well, we know LA's close and we're going to get there. And Ariana was already involved in performing arts.
So hold on a second. Let me ask this first. So you guys are still very involved in church at this point?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So, wow.
Right. Oh, no. So let me just back up with that part. This is what made it even worse. We got involved in a church plant out there in San Jose. We were on a leadership team. Both of us were on leadership teams. He helped with bump in, bump out because we were at a rented facility. And so he's like praising Jesus next to me, arms lifted high in worship. And if you know me at all, you know worship is just a huge thing with me. I don't worry about anybody around me. It is God and me. And our prayer time, he'd be praying over people. So when I learned all this, I was sick at my stomach. Say, how dare you mock God and mock our relationship by trying to do all of these things, and you know what you're doing. And
well, hold on. Before you, I'm sorry, I gotta. So back up here. So you get the call, you get the text message.
Yeah.
Go from there.
He was in Germany when I found out, which is honestly probably a good thing because I would have decked him.
But what does his husband say to you? I'm going to ask all the details.
Initially, he tried to deny it.
No.
So
the husband.
The other husband.
Oh, the other husband. He called. He lets me know what he knows, and he's gotten into her computer. And by this time, he's already confronted her, and she's admitted to it. So she's cooperating with him, and she's saying she wants her marriage to work. But I let him know I'm going to confront my husband. And at the time when I initially tried to make contact with him, the sad thing is like. My husband's not wanting to be on the up and up about it. And her husband's texting me saying he's talking to her.
So
wait, talk to her and what do you know?
So he is, the wife.
I'd hit someone.
Yeah. So the wife is.
This is why I said it's good.
The detective husband is telling his wife, say this to him, and she is completely open to everything that your husband is saying to them too. So everything, he's trying to be secretive behind your back, still talking to her.
So basically, I couldn't reach my husband. He was in meetings in Germany. And so I texted him. I said, I need to talk to you ASP. And he knows that when I do that, I'm not a high maintenance woman. So he knew it was something urgent. And didn't get anything from him. I said, I need to know if you know a lady named Lisa. I won't say her last name. And he said, yeah, she's in HR. Well, I took that to the way he worded it was manipulative because I took that to mean HR with his company. And I
would have thought the same thing.
I said, I need to know how you know her because she's saying you've had an affair. And at that point, then that's when
through text or through you're actually.
This was I did talk to him on the phone, and he
man.
No, I didn't at that time. It was text. That's when he called her. And that's when her husband let me know, you need to know that your husband's not trying to really be directly upfront with you because he's called my wife and to just see how much you might know. So I ended up having a conversation with him and he confessed to it. At this time, of course, my stomach's sick, but I want to know how many times. And he just basically said a couple of times.
So from the time you talked to the husband to the time your husband acknowledged it, how long had it been? Hours, days, weeks?
No, hours.
Okay, so
hours.
I feel like you need to get on a plane and get here.
Yeah. So
No.
keep going.
I went to my pastors in San Jose at that time, and they were pretty strong on it. And he's basically like, I need to have a conversation with him. And he told my husband, like, you better come clean with your wife about everything. It's not a matter of quote unquote, I'm protecting her. It's, dude, you did the crime. You need to pay for it. So anything that you have lied to your wife about,
these pastors are actually on point compared to
they were on point with that. There's other things that they weren't on point with, but yes, on that they were on point. And basically just said, if you want to have any hopes of your marriage being okay, you need to come clean with any lies that you've told her. I don't care how small or trivial it is. But that's where some things that weren't making sense in my marriage that he wasn't dealing with for a few years, he had to confess those. I mean, it was just stuff that, again, making me think I'm crazy when I would confront some stuff. And the reality is he was lying to me. So we had to go for the first week of him having conversations with me about everything that happened over the phone. And I would wait till Ariana was in bed, go into my closet because I knew it would be hard, and I would bawl and have like even screaming sessions and calling him a couple of names even that I had to apologize for later, but just out of anger. Had to hear all of that from the phone and deal with it. And Ariana is so in tune to me, my daughter, we call her Ari, but she's so in tune to me. She knew something was going on, and I had to help her feel comfortable that mommy's not real sick. And that was about it. Cause I'm like, you're telling her. I'm not telling her.
So
you're telling her.
You wanted your daughter to hear
I believe, again, going back to the word and the fact that generational curses happen.
I don't agree with that.
Oh,
I don't agree with that at all.
So, okay.
I do not agree with that at all.
What happens
I don't
later?
agree with that.
thing.
I don't agree with that at all.
Let me tell you
If
why.
you're going to work it out, I don't agree with that at all. That's not something. This is just, this is my 2 cents, and you won't say anything that'll convince me. You won't. That one I'll stick to, because if you're going to work it out, my 2 cents is the child doesn't need to be exposed to that kind of seeds.
Okay, but that's how generational curses carry on.
Hang on. If she's not exposed to something like that, and you guys are going to work it out, I don't think that, like, why expose to that? It's something. That's just my 2 cents.
What is your reasoning?
Because at that point, there's an insecure seed planted in her that men cheat. If my dad, the person who I love more than anything in this world, will cheat on my mom, who I love more than anything in this world, there's an insecurity that's implanted in her that men cheat.
But
Okay,
what
so let's talk
happens
about two
later when she finds out and nobody told her?
But that's a great question.
Okay, so
Hold on. That's a great question. But why does she have to find out later? Why does she have to find out? Because hold on. They find out if you tell them. If they do, there's no. It comes out.
Secrets always come out.
No,
Always. Always.
okay, so we're going to go back to
Hold
the
on,
fact
wait a minute.
that the
Y'all
word is what
all
we
have
live on.
to let me finish my thought. Y'all cannot do what typical women do, just not let the man finish something. So, because I'm not getting a chance to say anything here with all of y'all.
Go, Bernie.
Thank you.
Bernie.
So, at this particular point, I think all lies come out when they're not dealt with, right? When the offense is done to the woman, or the woman does an offense to the man, it's important. That lie has to be brought out. It has to be talked about. It has to be done everything. And I think that you two have to handle it. What I don't think is you take the innocence of a child who doesn't know any better. I don't think it makes any sense. There's nothing biblical that says tell your child this at all. I do think that if you two have to handle it, that it's important that he comes clean, and all those things need to be done that way. But there's nothing in the Bible that says, you know what? There's really not. That says tell your child if infidelity's been done. No, there's not.
So I know I don't have a voice, but the child feels that there's something wrong in the house. They
Correct.
feel it. They know the discord. Even if the fighting is in secret. Children are very smart.
Yes.
They
100%.
feel it. So any child can deal with anything when they know the full truth. They will be able to handle it.
Totally agree.
They will be able to work through it. If they find out later they feel betrayed, they feel like they are not smart enough to handle things.
Sure.
It is much more difficult for children to handle things that they find out after the fact, not from the parent themselves.
Yeah.
That goes all the way to parents that stay together for the sake of the kids. I have so many studies and so many things I've seen in person. Those kids have the biggest issues. If you tell a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, 7, all those innocent kids at 8, 9, 10, doesn't matter. This is what's going on. We're not going to stay together. They adjust.
Yo, that's the truth. So I think that if it's not a matter of they, so this is the first time I think since I've done a show with you guys that I have
totally disagreed.
Very, very much disagreed with this.
I love it.
This is the first time.
But not to this extent it is. And so the thing is this, if you get divorced, because I have a son, I've gone through divorce. And I think there's limited. They're limited on what they have the ability to understand. I think that if you are going to stay together, and I think that if you're going to work something out, I think that's something that needs to be worked out and healed from. And if you're going to forgive, it needs to be talked about, discussed, go to therapy, go to counseling, do this stuff, and deal with it. But I don't think it's anybody else's business. It's not. And you got to go to someone and call them out. You got to go to someone and say, hey, you did me wrong. But I think, and time will tell, right? I think what ends up happening is you start taking the innocence of a child and you plant a seed that their most important male figure, if the most important male figure in my life can hurt the most important female figure in my life, all men are doing that. All men can do that. And the thing is no matter what you say, again, I'm going to let you, I totally will stop talking. There's nothing biblical to support that telling a child about infidelity.
I'm going to send you scriptures later because I can't get into all of them now, but I definitely
everything
will.
Can be taken out of context, and every story, every study can be...
First of all, the word says you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
But that has nothing to do with the child, though.
It goes to anybody.
It
God didn't put any
one-on-one.
limits. First of all, when God says something, it's like we want to make our own spin on it. So we have to be really careful because hiding stuff, there's all kinds of scriptures that I'm going to send you, and Holy Spirit can work with you on that, not me. That's his thing. But let's talk about like physically, like I'm in agreement with you on the child knows what's going on. So go back to family stuff.
Sure.
And first of all, and this is a proven statistic with a lot of counselors. What happens in that is the daughter or my daughter knew there was something going on with her mother and she couldn't tell what it was. If I lie and I hide that and then it comes out later on, she not only has her father broken trust, but then I have, and then that opens up Satan to having a foothold on them in other ways. If I don't agree with parents getting their kids in the middle, that's never wrong. No. But the truth needs to be told.
For what?
In a way. And the other thing is people tend to say, well, I don't agree with this or I don't agree with that. I don't really care what people agree with or what they don't. I go to the truth. And then I'm not confused. I'm not feeling anxiety because I know that God has told me what to do and I'm doing what he told me to do. People are flawed in their thinking.
Sure.
All of us are.
No.
Myself included. But what happens is you have a situation like this, a person who's been lying for a long time, and then let's just assume that they do want to make it right.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to take time for that to happen, but the sin has happened.
Okay.
But then the wife is dealing with all this stuff. She's going to go through anger, sadness, tears, emotions, and even if they're wanting to work it out, what happens a lot of times is the child turns on that parent who's had the thing happen to them. And that's not what God ever intends. But then let's just say that the person in the end doesn't want to fix it, which is what's happened in my marriage. My husband held on to not wanting to do the work he needed to do.
Right.
Then statistically, it's a huge statistics of the number of kids who turn against that parent who stood up to the evil because of the lies that person has been protecting. In other words, me. I'm the mother who was protecting him. I didn't want them to know everything. They're able to turn it around and make the mother in this situation be the bad guy. They're horrible. They're mean. They're cruel. If they know the truth, then they know what to stand on. It has helped my daughter so much. And I haven't been the only one speaking to her. I've let her go to God's word herself. I've let her have healthy people in her life to know what is right and what's not right.
No.
But let's say in the end, her dad somehow does get things right. And I hope and I pray he does, because I don't have an animosity to him. I have an animosity to evil and ugly. Let's just say down the road, he gets healthy it's isolated the problem at this point, and she can see a beautiful thing come out of that, and that her daddy was able to do the right thing and make things right, and we all have done wrong. What is much better is for a kid to see that there was sin and there were consequences for the sin, and that at the other side of that there was healing and forgiveness that resulted in them seeing a true reality instead of a false reality. Generational curses continue on by the truth not being brought out and being lied and covered up.
I can speak from experience with my mom and dad that at the time, like, my dad did a lot of bad, but I don't think that every guy is doing that.
Right.
I think that he had affairs on my mom also, like being in the mafia and doing the things that he did. And at the time when my mom met Patrick, I didn't know that she had met someone. And in my mind, I thought they were still married. I had no clue what was happening. And I remember telling a friend of mine in high school, I think my mom is cheating on my dad. Because I had no idea. But then when all the truth came out, I remember telling her, God, I just want you both to be happy. I loved knowing everything. And I felt like there were no secrets because my dad, who I love to this day very much, and I miss him all the time, did really bad and was a con artist and a pathological liar. That's the God honest truth. That is really hard to deal with as a kid, and even for my mom and what our family went through. But I in no way think that every guy is doing those things. Now, do I think it had an effect on some of my relationship choices? Probably. But that had nothing to do with I think that I just sometimes gravitate to people like my dad, unfortunately. But I don't think that the truth made me think that there were people like that. I think the truth made it where I respected my mom for always telling me, knowing that no matter what, they were always going to tell me the truth. And my dad, no matter what he did, it was still my dad. And my dad hurt a lot of people, but to me, he was still an awesome person. It's hard to that sounds crazy.
No, it doesn't at all. That's not hard at all.
Yeah.
But
I have a story too. My parents, off the chain crazy.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was going on. It caused so much anxiety in me that I still live with today because the insane fighting, the screaming, I never knew what was going on. Either we're not talking at all. For weeks at a time. Then my mom tries to jump off a balcony. I'm trying to save her life because so much stuff going on.
You have no idea.
Insane, and I don't know what's happening. I'm laying in my bed shaking because I didn't know what's going to happen next. I wish I had known. That's where I'm going with that because when you have a spouse cheating and you say maybe they work it out, for them to get to that point is a long road, and most of the time never happens.
But you're
much emotion and heartache through that time. I feel that children are.
Why add a heartache to it though? Why add a child's heartache to it? Because you're adding an unnecessary. But the truth is between you two, not you two, both your kids and the cousin. I think it's a necessary thing to take the innocence of a child.
That's the innocence of a child. Parents are screaming.
But you're right. But that also comes in where there's therapy and there's counseling. If you're going to work it out, I think that you guys got to handle it and protect the children, because at the end of the day, I think the children are the ones who get.
But I think that when you're a kid, I know, like, if my mom and dad were fighting, I actually can remember vividly very stressed about divorce at one point, because I was like, I don't know what is going on at all. Like, that was very, it's very hard because I don't care if you're a mom or dad, you're still a human being. So as moms, or as a woman or a man, whatever, when your spouse cheats or boyfriend cheats, whatever, they can't hold a brave face for 24/7. They're going to break at some point, or that feels funny, or I don't understand why my mom is crying all the time. I don't know why my mom and dad aren't speaking right now. I don't know why they won't look at each other. There's a weird energy. And if they're like, Mom, what is wrong? You want to lie to them and say nothing?
No, absolutely. There's no way you say nothing. It's impossible to do that. But happens, life happens. There's all sorts of things. I fortunately haven't had to have that conversation, because I would never go to my son and be like, hey, I just want to let you know I'm acting really weird and I'm really hurt right now because your mom cheated on me with my best friend. for what he doesn't know any better. He does not understand how to handle that.
I mean, if he came to you
and said, Dad, did mom cheat? He's
no, saying, Dad, what is going on?
What I would say to my son is, Dad is going through, baby, I'm just going through a tough time right now. I'm doing some stuff. And then I would do, because I've gone through my own set of stuff. I've gone through as much as anyone here, and I understand. And so, at those moments, I think it's life is going to happen, but we have to be protective of those that we love. And this is my 2 cents. And it's okay to agree to disagree. Nothing wrong. I love you guys.
Yes, it is.
But at the end of the day, time will tell.
That's why
right?
it's so great.
Yeah. I mean, time tells. Time will tell if that's the right decision. I mean, that's the whole thing about it. Only if you think that what your real father did impacted you now. I mean, I could look at stuff with my dad and see how it impacted me now, that I found out and that I didn't know and whatnot. So, but I mean, that's also, again, why there's just different opinions and whatnot. And
well, everybody's different. Everybody handles things different.
Right.
I personally appreciated that I knew everything.
Yeah.
I loved that today. I don't have any surprises. I know that was something big in our life in general with my dad, speaking in just random terms. I know that my mom can say all the time, like, Patrick is such a breath of fresh air, because for a long time my mom was scared to open a glove box because of what could be found because of my dad.
A gun.
I think that it is
a grenade.
It has been a little bit more, it's been nice for her. It's nice to not have to find out stuff, because that just always sucks. And I think especially in your family, like, why didn't you tell me that happened that long ago? Like, I wish I would have known. But everybody is different, and the way you do things is not the way she does things, and her and myself. But I think that, and people respond to stuff differently. I can say from a child of that, I am really glad that I knew all of it.
There's age appropriateness too.
Sure.
Like, at the age she was at when it happened, there was a high level given, and then she's asked questions from there, and then that's where, they don't need to know every gory detail, but they need to know what's going on in general. And it's helped her to build a trust in character and integrity. So
there you go.
Don't ever tell anything.
No, I couldn't understand that. What was that?
She said, don't ever tell anything.
No kidding.
No, like I said, yeah, it's all right. We can agree to disagree.
Yes, we can.
yeah, that was a big long one.
I
You
love
got kind of winded on that one.
No, I got a lot more wind. I can go off on that one. I can definitely go a lot longer on that one.
I think we need to call Miss Polly.
Let's call her.
Party with Miss Polly.
It's a party with Miss Polly. That's our new slogan with her.
Hello.
Miss Polly, how are you?
My mom has no voice.
Oh my gosh.
She's sick.
Oh my
It's her
Lisa.
sister. It's her sister.
She's
How are
sick.
you, my love?
Her alter ego.
I know.
I'm good.
I miss you.
How is everybody?
Kidding.
I miss you too.
Hey, we have a new jingle, but it's not out yet, and it's Party with Miss Polly, modern day Dr. Ruth.
Michael said we haven't got the voiceover back yet, so we don't
Okay.
have it for this week.
So I'll
So
just
if we
say it.
Yeah, just do something fun.
Party with Miss Polly. Oh, I
Party
can't
with
sing.
Miss
Party with Miss Polly. Okay. Sure.
Oh,
yeah, it's party time with Miss Paul.
my God,
That's perfect. I think that should be it.
That's so funny.
That needs to be it, Spider. That's so
Spider, you're so smart.
You're so good at this job.
Our question today is, tell us about the role of shame about our sexuality, because that's a huge problem.
I'm kind of asking a couple of questions just to find out, like, do you mean like being sexual creatures in
Yes,
terms
and
of
you know,
women?
women and men both. Like, there is like people like to put shame on it.
Oh yeah.
What do you mean? Like,
Yeah, I'm kind of
Well,
thrown off of the question
yeah.
a bit.
I know what you're saying.
I don't know.
I mean, I
couldn't understand either.
because, well, especially if you grew up in a very conservative household or in a conservative area.
Right.
Like, for instance, I grew up here in the Panhandle where, number one, you just didn't talk about sex.
Right.
And you were taught that it was bad, that, keep your legs closed. And, if you had sex, you were going to get a disease. And everything about that brings shame when you grow up. And you don't have a healthy, and even if you're abused, especially if you're abused sexually, and it's not discussed, it's not talked about, you don't reveal it to anybody. And you're made to feel ashamed if, you brought it on yourself. It was your fault.
They say you're either too slutty or too prude or...
yeah.
And the guys can do whatever
they
I'm sorry, your voice is just throwing me off a little bit. I'm not used to it at all.
Well, it's true. I mean, because, that double standard of if a guy has sex with a lot of girls, he's considered a stud.
Yeah.
But if a girl has sex with a lot of guys, she's a slut.
Yeah.
Right. Or you should be too thin or too curvy or nothing's right ever, right?
Yeah. Well, you're talking about body dysmorphia as well, where, okay, we have no true identity or healthy way of describing ourselves. When we look in the mirror, we're always thinking about what other people say about us or see about us.
I think it's changed a little bit. I think from where guys are looked at as like studs. I think guys tend to be looked at more of like douchebags, the ones who bang a bunch of girls, and girls are still looked at as skanks. But I mean, I'm talking the ones who are sleeping. I think maybe with the Me Too movement, I was talking earlier, and I think it's starting to change. I mean, but at the end of the day, I mean, people are shamed. We're shamed for so many different things nowadays. So it's one of those. It's a very tough thing. But I feel like in today's society, everyone's starting to get more comfortable talking about stuff. What are you guys laughing about?
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at the question of the day. First of all, I had to read her writing, and so I feel like I'm sounding it out. And as I'm figuring out the question, it's making me laugh. Now I want to read it to you.
I do think that it's good because of a good thing with social media and things like that is the fact that it allows you to talk about it more. And I think that that's healthy. Conservative or not, it's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just stuff gets used the wrong way in anything.
Totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally agree. Yeah. I mean, it gets misconstrued by so many things.
Yeah.
And so, I agree.
So let's go question of the day. Oh, sorry.
Wow.
Sorry, Miss Polly. Oh.
That's okay.
Oh, question of the day?
Oh, let her finish.
No, go ahead, Miss Polly.
Well, I was just saying that at the end of the day, the reality is you need to become comfortable with yourself and stand up for what you want, your desires, your needs, your preferences. Don't be ashamed. You just need to step out of that.
Right.
That's just what I wanted to say.
I love it. Okay, question of the day, please.
The two posh girls ask the question of the day.
I'm really curious about this one now. Y'all both dying laughing about it.
Well, the way she wrote it, I had to really sound it out because my mom's writing is really bad. Not bad. It's just so...
It's European.
It's European. It's hard to read. Okay, so question of the day. You went on a first date to dinner. Everything was great, except they kept licking their fingers instead of using the napkin.
That is not a real question of the day.
Every single finger. Is this a deal breaker?
Okay, it depends if you're eating like ribs and hot wings, maybe.
Stop. Why did you waste a question of the day on that one right there? Oh my God, that's so.
Where your hands have been. I'm just kidding.
Do what?
Like loudly?
It depends on where the.
Really? Loudly? Does it matter? Come on now.
To me, that might show off some skill, and I might be.
I don't think so, dude. There's no skill in that. That's a skill that's dirty.
Is that that's a deal breaker?
That's not even. God, I shouldn't dignify that with an answer. That is a stupid one. So I'd be so pissed off at somebody who was just smacking their fingers.
On a first date, what if she was hot?
There's no one's that hot. There are
There are things that make you not look as good anymore.
No, there are things that would be something.
See, it's a great question.
Yeah, that's a no. There's no. That's not a good question. That is a horrible thing, and I'd have to laugh at somebody
every
else
time
who did
I'm
that.
at like a ribs place or like
thinking
You're gonna smack.
See somebody do that, I'm gonna be like,
I've seen it before.
You need to do that. You need to do that with your husband and just see what he does. You need to record your phone there. Oh, that's so funny.
First date, absolutely not. I would be like, oh my God.
Would you make it a second date?
No.
Okay. I mean,
if it's a new date thing, absolutely not.
No, right? No. That's so nasty.
Mom, would you?
No.
Where did that?
Spider?
He acknowledged it. Yes, he would already. He thinks,
No, I was joking.
thank God, man.
That is gross.
See, sometimes it's bad when spiders bite.
He's on a
I
board
disagree with that too. Yeah.
I don't know. Depends on where we're eating. Don't take anybody where they're eating anything with their hands.
Yeah, especially on a first date, right?
What about like medieval times?
Right,
That's on a
medieval
first date.
times.
Why did you go there on a first date?
You don't go to eat pizza, and you don't go to eat wings, and you don't go to eat
But
barbecue.
can't you eat all those things without having to lick every finger?
Yes,
I have seen people do it.
I
What's
know,
that?
but
Without licking their fingers? Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
So why not?
they bring you
Oh,
wet
man.
wipes and stuff to help.
No, that's a hood thing, man. You're from the hood or something like that. If you're like sucking on your fingers and nasty bullshit,
Oh
that's so
my
nasty. But you can eat all that stuff without making a
That's
mess.
what I was going to say. You don't have to lick all your
Right.
fingers.
It's
On
so
that
funny.
note, we are wrapping up the show and thank you
Yay,
for listening.
thank you.